Elias lived by the sea, in a town that smelled of salt, rain, and distant music. Every morning before the sun rose, he'd sit before his drum kit in a narrow studio above a bakery. The world was still asleep, but Elias was already chasing rhythm. He believed that greatness belonged to those who never stopped moving. His hands knew discipline like a second language, blistered, bandaged, but relentless. Every strike of the drum was a promise to himself. One day, I'll be heard. Yet, between those strikes, there was a silence he never learned to listen to. The silence made him uneasy, like a reminder that not all progress is visible, not all success loud. People in town admired his work ethic. They saw the lights on his window long after midnight and called him the devoted one. But devotion, when tied too tightly to achievement, begins to suffocate. Elias didn't notice this. He only knew how to push, harder, faster, louder. When he played at the local cafe, the crowd cheered his speed. The rhythms were sharp and precise, like rain on glass. He smiled, but the applause never filled him. Somewhere inside, a quieter rhythm, patience, stillness, was trying to speak. He just didn't yet understand its language. Elias's dream was simple: to join a famous touring band and escape the small-town routine. He believed that once he got there, he'd finally find peace. What he didn't know was that peace rarely waits at the finish line. It hides in the pauses, in the breath between beats, in the space he was too busy to hear. And so his journey began. A drummer who mistook movement for meaning and sound for purpose. But life had a different tempo waiting for him.
The mornings grew longer, and the rhythm of Elias's days became mechanical. Practice, work, play, repeat. He woke before dawn, the air still heavy with mist, and beat his drums until his arms trembled. The bakery downstairs would open, the smell of bread rising through the floorboards, but Elias barely noticed. He was chasing something invisible, the sound of becoming someone. His efforts began to pay off. The cafe gigs turned into small festivals. His name whispered among the local musicians. One evening, a well-known producer visiting from the city happened to stop by the harbor. Elias played with his usual fire, his sticks moving so fast they blurred. When he finished, the producer nodded and said, "You've got talent, but you've also got time. Don't burn it all too soon." Elias smiled politely, but his pride swallowed the warning. Time, he thought. Time is for the slow. I've waited long enough. He pushed harder. He replaced meals with rehearsals, friends with practice, rest with rhythm. Every beat became a declaration of hunger, ambition, and defiance. The world began to notice. His social media filled with clips of his performances, comments calling him a machine, a rising star. It fed something inside him, something bright but restless. When people applauded, he bowed, but his eyes always searched for the next audience, the next test. For a while, everything looked perfect. He was young, talented, and finally being seen. The town celebrated him as proof that dedication pays off. Yet beneath the surface, His body began to ache. His spirit began to tire. Every night he returned home, the drums still echoing in his chest. But silence no longer brought peace. It brought panic. Elias was rising, yes, but without realizing it, he was also drifting further from balance. The louder his world became, the more fragile his rhythm grew. It happened on a humid summer night, the kind when the air feels thick with unseen weight. Elias had been invited to perform with a touring band at the city amphitheater, the biggest stage of his life. It was everything he had worked for. The sleepless nights, the bleeding hands, the endless practice, all leading to this. Backstage, he felt his pulse racing faster than his tempo. The crowd roared beyond the curtains, their energy flooding the air like static. He tightened his grip on the sticks, whispering to himself, "Keep the rhythm. Don't stop now." The first song began flawlessly. His hands moved with precision, his confidence returning with every strike. Then, somewhere in the second set, one beat, one fraction too soon, he lost the rhythm. The music stuttered. His bandmates turned sharply, confusion in their eyes. He tried to correct it, but panic had already entered the bloodstream of the performance. The rhythm slipped again and again. By the end of the song, silence swallowed the applause. The lead guitarist forced a smile. The crowd clapped, politely, uncertain. Elias's heart sank like a stone in water. After the show, no one spoke to him. The producer who once praised him simply patted his shoulder and said softly, "You played too fast." It was the same phrase that would echo in his head for weeks. Too fast, too fast. Back home, the drums stood like silent witnesses. He sat before them, his hands trembling. The same sticks that once felt like wings now felt like anchors. Every sound he made reminded him of that mistake, one wrong beat that shattered everything he'd built. Days turned into weeks. The calls stopped coming. The festivals didn't invite him back. The silence he once feared had arrived, but this time, it wasn't peaceful. It was punishment. Elias told himself it was just bad luck, a momentary slip, nothing more. He convinced himself he could fix it if he just practiced harder. So he returned to the studio, shut the door, and began again. The room was small, the air stale, but he filled it with furious rhythm. Hours turned into days, the beat unrelenting, louder, faster, desperate. He played until his palms split open again, the old wounds reopening like stubborn memories. "You played too fast," the producer's voice still echoed in his mind. So Elias tried to slow down, then speed up, then perfect every transition until the clock lost meaning. The world outside moved on. Friends stopped checking in, the bakery closed early some nights, and still the same lights burned in his window. He told himself this was recovery, but in truth, he was still fighting the fall, trying to rewrite the past with noise. Each beat became an act of denial, a refusal to accept that sometimes failure is not fixed by force, it's softened by surrender. One night, as the rain drummed against the roof, Elias sat in front of his kit, exhausted. The sticks slipped from his hands. He stared at them, the tools that once gave him identity, and felt something strange. Not anger, but fear. Who was he without rhythm? What did he become when the sound stopped? He picked up the sticks again and played harder, as if drowning out the silence would keep him alive. But the more he played, the emptier it felt. The drums no longer answered him. They only echoed his unrest. Outside, the sea kept its slow rhythm, patient and steady. Inside, Elias's rhythm grew frantic, uneven. He wasn't healing, he was clinging to the ghost of who he once was. And in that stubborn grip,
he began to lose more than his music. He began to lose himself.
One afternoon, after weeks of isolation, Elias wandered aimlessly through the town. The sea breeze carried a chill, and gulls circled lazily above the pier. He walked without purpose, tired, hungry, and hollow. His mind kept replaying that one night at the amphitheater, the mist beat, the silence that followed. As he reached the harbor, he heard a faint rhythm, not from a drum set, but from two wooden sticks tapping gently on a railing. A little boy sat there, swinging his legs, tapping to the rhythm of the waves. The sound was uneven but alive. It wasn't perfect, yet it had something Elias's playing had long lost: joy. The boy looked up. "You're the drummer, right? My dad showed me your video." Elias nodded weakly. "Used to be," he said. The boy shrugged. "You still are if you play." Then he grinned and offered Elias one of the sticks. "Want to play with me?" Elias hesitated. The child's stick was rough, splintered, nothing like the polished pair he was used to. But something about the simplicity, the rhythm of the sea, the innocent beat, disarmed him. He sat down beside the boy and began to tap, slowly at first, then in time with the waves. For the first time in months, the rhythm felt soft, natural, not something to control, but something to follow. The boy giggled and said, "You listen good. Most people play too loud to hear the sea." Elias looked at the horizon. The sun was low, its reflection trembling on the water. A lump rose in his throat. Maybe that was the truth he'd been missing all along. That patience isn't waiting for perfection. It's listening for the rhythm that life already plays.
The next morning, Elias returned to his studio. But this time, he didn't rush to sit behind the drums. He opened the window first. The sound of the sea drifted in, steady and calm, blending with the soft hum of life outside. For the first time, he just stood there and listened. He picked up his sticks and rested them gently on the snare. No rush, no pressure. He played a single beat, then waited. Another, then waited again. It felt strange, uncomfortable at first, to leave space between sounds. But in that space, something began to breathe again. Each morning, he practiced not to perfect, but to understand. He learned how to hear the rhythm of footsteps on the street, the heartbeat of rain, the quiet pulse of his own breathing. The drums became less of a weapon and more of a mirror. He wasn't fighting the silence anymore. He was learning to live inside it. One afternoon, he met the boy again at the harbor. They played with sticks on metal railings, laughing at their mistakes. "You got slower," the boy teased. Elias smiled. "Yeah, turns out slow isn't bad." Days turned into weeks. His hands healed, not from rest, but from gentleness. He started journaling, short notes about patience, humility, and presence. The ache in his chest began to ease. He still wasn't performing publicly, but something deeper was happening, a quiet rebirth. The world didn't see it, but he felt it with every steady breath, every measured tap. Elias realized that discipline wasn't about control, it was about alignment, with rhythm, with time, with life itself. The boy's words echoed often. Most people play too loud to hear the sea. Elias finally understood what that meant. He no longer chased rhythm, he became part of it.
Months passed. The air had changed, softer, lighter, as if time itself had slowed its heartbeat. Elias no longer woke to the sound of urgency. Instead, he rose with the sun, letting light fill his small studio before he touched the drums. The same space that once echoed with frustration now felt like a sanctuary. He began performing again, not at grand halls, but in small community spaces, parks, cafes, and school auditoriums. His playing had transformed. There was no rush, no need to prove anything. Each rhythm carried emotion, like words without language. People listened differently too, not cheering for speed, but closing their eyes, breathing with the pulse of his music. After one performance, an old man approached him. "You play like you've lived many lives," he said. Elias smiled. "Maybe I've just learned to stop fighting the tempo." He started teaching local kids, including the boy from the pier. They gathered on weekends, tapping rhythms with sticks, pots, and empty buckets. Elias taught them not only how to count beats, but how to feel them. Drumming isn't about control, he told them. It's about trust, in time, in yourself, in what's coming next. As he spoke, he realized those words weren't just lessons for them, they were reminders for himself. On a quiet evening, he returned to the shore where he once met the boy. The waves still rolled in steady rhythm, endless and patient. He closed his eyes and played along with the sea, the sound blending into the wind. There was no audience, no applause, just harmony. For the first time in years, Elias didn't need to be heard. He only needed to be present. And in that stillness, he found everything he had once been chasing: peace, purpose, and rhythm. Years later, when people asked Elias about his success, he would smile gently and say, "It wasn't success that changed me, it was silence." He had learned what few ever pause long enough to understand, that the real rhythm of life isn't measured in beats per minute, but in the spaces between them. The pauses, the stillness, are where we learn who we are. From his journey, there were lessons carved in rhythm and time. Patience is not waiting, it's trusting the process. The world moves fast, but growth does not. Discipline is not punishment, it's devotion. True discipline flows with kindness, not force. Failure is not an ending, it's feedback. Every fall reveals what noise has been hiding. Letting go is not losing, it's returning to what's real, to what's steady, to what's meant for you. Courage isn't loud, it's quiet persistence. It's showing up again even when no one is watching. Healing is slow, but so is music that lasts. Time refines what ego once rushed. Peace is not found at the finish line, it's in the breath between efforts. Elias's story reminds you of something simple yet sacred. Your rhythm is your own. You can't rush the melody of becoming. Some seasons demand movement, others stillness. Both are music. So if you're in your silence right now, lost, uncertain, waiting, remember, even the sea pauses between waves. Trust the rhythm of your life. It hasn't abandoned you. It's just teaching you to listen.